One of the most interesting things about attraction is that it rarely announces itself in the way we expect. We imagine that when someone is falling for us, there will be some dramatic moment where everything becomes obvious. He'll say something profound. He'll suddenly confess his feelings. He'll make some grand romantic gesture that removes all uncertainty. But real attraction often doesn't work like that. It leaks. It appears in the small changes in someone's behavior before they have even fully admitted those feelings to themselves. And one of the clearest places you can see that happening is in the way a man treats your presence differently from everyone else's. Think about that for a moment. You walk into a room and something changes. Maybe it's subtle. He becomes more animated. He suddenly seems more conscious of what he's saying. He starts paying closer attention. He looks for your reaction when he tells a joke. He remembers something you mentioned weeks ago. He finds a reason to stand closer to you, or perhaps he becomes slightly nervous in a way that doesn't happen around other people. These things can look insignificant when viewed individually, but psychologically they're fascinating, because attention is one of the most valuable forms of human investment. Where we place our attention tells us what has become important to us. You don't consciously remember every sentence spoken by every person you meet. You don't notice every change in everyone's mood. You don't store every tiny detail about everyone's life. Your mind filters constantly. It has to. There is simply too much information in the world for you to process equally. So when someone starts becoming important to you, your attention begins behaving differently. You notice them. You remember them. You monitor their reactions. You become curious about them. And sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. That's why one of the first signs of developing attraction isn't necessarily increased affection. It's increased awareness, He becomes aware of where you are. He notices when you arrive. He notices when you leave. He notices when you're quieter than usual. He notices when your energy changes. He notices the tiny things other people overlook. And here's where this becomes particularly interesting. Attraction can make us become more aware not only of the person we like, but of ourselves around that person. Have you ever noticed how differently you behave around someone whose opinion matters to you? Suddenly, you become conscious of your posture. Your clothes, your words, your sense of humor, your appearance. You think twice before saying something. You wonder how you came across. That's not necessarily insecurity. Sometimes it's simply significance. When another person's perception starts to matter, we naturally become more self-aware in their presence. And this can happen to a man who is beginning to fall for you. He may start trying a little harder without realizing he's trying. Maybe he tells a story that makes him look competent. Maybe he mentions something he's accomplished. Maybe he becomes more playful. Maybe he tries to make you laugh. Maybe he wants you to see a certain side of him. And notice the distinction here. He's not necessarily performing because he's fake. He's revealing. He's showing you the version of himself he hopes you will find attractive. That's an incredibly human instinct. When we care about someone's opinion, we don't simply want their attention. We want to be seen favorably by them, And that's where attraction begins to move beyond physical chemistry. Because physical attraction says, I like looking at you. Emotional attraction begins to say, I care about how you see me. Those are very different things. A man can find someone beautiful, and never become emotionally invested in her. But when he begins caring about her perception of him, something deeper may be happening. He starts wondering, does she respect me? Does she enjoy being around me? Does she understand my humor? Does she think I'm interesting? Does she admire the things I care about? Her opinion starts occupying mental space, and mental space is significant because what we repeatedly think about begins to shape what we prioritize. Now, I want you to be careful with this because there is a trap here. You can become so focused on decoding male behavior that every glance becomes evidence, every text becomes a clue, and every coincidence becomes a secret message. That's not intuition, that's anxiety disguised as analysis. And if you're constantly asking, what did that look mean? Why did he take 3 hours to reply? Why did he stand there? Why did he like that post? You aren't actually observing reality anymore. You're trying to manufacture certainty from ambiguity. The healthier approach is to step back and look for patterns. One gesture means very little. A pattern means much more. If he's friendly with everyone, his friendliness toward you doesn't necessarily mean anything. But if he's friendly with everyone and somehow becomes more attentive, more curious, more engaged, and more emotionally present specifically around you, now you've got something worth noticing. The difference is not intensity, it's distinctiveness. Does he treat you differently? That's the question. Does he remember your preferences while forgetting everyone else's? Does he notice your mood? Does he seek your reaction? Does he make an effort to keep conversations going? Does he naturally gravitate toward you even when he has other people around him? Does he seem particularly interested in making you laugh? Does he remember details you assumed he had forgotten? These aren't guarantees of love, but they can reveal where his attention is naturally going. And where attention goes, emotional significance often follows. There is another subtle sign that people overlook, the way he creates small moments of connection. Maybe you're in a group and he makes a comment specifically for you. Maybe something happens during the day and you're the person he instinctively wants to tell. Maybe he sees something funny and thinks, she would love this. That is important. Because attraction isn't just about wanting someone when they are physically present. It is about thinking about them when they are absent. That's when someone begins taking up psychological space in your life, and eventually that internal presence starts affecting external behavior. You begin making choices that create opportunities for interaction. You sit closer. You start conversations. You ask questions. You remember details. You create inside jokes. You find reasons to share experiences. You don't always say, I want to get closer to this person. You simply start behaving like someone who wants greater closeness. This is why I often think the best way to understand attraction is not to listen only to what someone says. Watch what they repeatedly move toward . People can control words, they can hide intentions, they can even convince themselves that they don't care. But behavior has a way of revealing priorities over time, and this is particularly important for women who have spent too much time trying to interpret mixed signals. You don't need to become a detective. You don't need to decode every movement. You don't need to become obsessed with whether he's secretly falling for you. Instead, ask a much more powerful question. what happens consistently when he has the freedom to choose? Asterisk asterisk, when he has free time, does he choose connection? When you're together, does he choose engagement? When something matters to him, does he choose to include you? When you pull back slightly, does he notice your absence? When he has the opportunity to know you more deeply, does he take it? Those choices tell you more than 100 flirtatious moments ever could, because attraction is not merely what someone feels. It's what those feelings cause them to do. And that brings us to an important philosophical truth about relationships. Asterisk asterisk, attention is a form of love in its earliest language, but attention without action is not enough. Asterisk asterisk, a man can notice you and still not be ready for a relationship. He can be attracted to you and still be emotionally unavailable. He can enjoy your company and still not have the intention to build something. So don't confuse the first signs of emotional movement with the final destination. You're not looking for proof that he is obsessed. You're looking for evidence that his interest is becoming intentional. That's the difference between chemistry and character. Chemistry makes someone notice you. Character determines what they do with that feeling. And if you remember nothing else from this part of the conversation, remember this. And once you start noticing that difference in attention, there is another layer that becomes even more revealing. Because when a man is genuinely becoming interested in you, he doesn't just notice you differently. He often starts finding small, almost unnecessary reasons to create connection. And I say unnecessary because that's exactly what makes them interesting. He doesn't actually need a reason to send you that message. He doesn't need to ask your opinion about something he could easily decide himself. He doesn't need to show you a video, bring up an old joke, tell you something that happened during his day, or find some tiny excuse to continue a conversation that could have naturally ended 10 minutes ago, but he does. Why? Because when someone becomes emotionally significant, connection starts becoming rewarding in itself. Think about how human beings behave when they are genuinely interested in someone. We don't always announce our desire for closeness directly. In fact, many people don't. Instead, we create little bridges, a question, a message, a joke, a shared reference. This reminded me of you, a reason to ask how something went, a reason to see you. These moments may look trivial from the outside, but psychologically, they're fascinating because they reveal something about where someone's mind is naturally going. When you matter to someone, you begin appearing in their thoughts without being invited. Something happens and they think of you. They see something funny and they imagine your reaction. They hear a song and remember a conversation. They walk past a place you once mentioned. They remember that you had something important happening that day. And suddenly, there is an impulse to reach out. That impulse is significant because attraction doesn't only live in the moments when two people are physically together. It lives in the moments when they are apart. That's where emotional attachment begins to reveal itself. Because if you only have chemistry when you're standing face to face, that may simply be chemistry. But if your presence continues to exist in someone's mind after you've left, something deeper may be developing. And this is where women sometimes make the mistake of looking for dramatic evidence. They think, if he really likes me, he should tell me. But that's not always how emotional development works. People often experience feelings before they understand them. A man may not consciously think, I'm falling for her, therefore I should create more opportunities for connection. Instead, he simply notices that he wants to talk to you. He wants to know what you're doing. He wants your opinion. He wants to tell you something. He wants another conversation. And because those impulses feel natural, he may not even recognize how revealing they are. This is why small acts of investment can be more meaningful than big moments of flirtation. Flirting can be spontaneous. Investment is usually repeated. Anyone can compliment you, but who consistently makes room for you? Anyone can say you're beautiful, but who remembers what matters to you? Anyone can send a late night message because they're bored. But who checks in because they genuinely care how something went? Those distinctions matter, because attraction isn't simply about attention. It's about investment of attention, and attention has a cost. Every time someone chooses to continue a conversation, remember a detail, make a plan, ask a question, or create an opportunity for connection, they are spending something they cannot get back. Time, mental energy, emotional energy, and people naturally invest these resources where they perceive value. This doesn't mean every message is a declaration of love, of course not. But when you see a repeated pattern of effort, you begin to understand something about priority. And that's what you should be watching, not the occasional burst of attention, the pattern, because inconsistency can create enormous confusion. A man might text you intensely for 3 days and disappear for 5. He might flirt heavily one night and act indifferent the next. He might tell you how much he enjoys talking to you, but never actually make an effort to see you. And that's where we need to become emotionally intelligent. Interest isn't just what someone does when they feel inspired. Interest is what someone continues to do when life becomes ordinary. That's the test. Anybody can be excited at the beginning. Anybody can be charming when the chemistry is new. But genuine interest starts revealing itself through consistency. Does he keep showing up? Does he remember? Does he follow through? Does he create opportunities rather than merely respond when you create them? Does he gradually make the connection easier instead of making you work harder for it? Because there's a profound difference between someone who enjoys receiving your attention and someone who actively seeks to build a connection with you. The first person likes what you give them, the second person wants to know you, and those are not the same thing. This is also why you shouldn't measure attraction by how much effort you can extract from someone. You don't want to become the project manager of your own relationship. You don't want to constantly initiate, constantly suggest plans, constantly restart conversations, constantly create emotional momentum, and then call it chemistry because he responds enthusiastically when you do all the work. That's not necessarily mutual interest. That's you creating the relationship and him participating in it. There's a difference, and one of the most empowering things you can learn in dating is to stop asking, how can I get him to invest more? Instead ask, what does he naturally invest when I stop doing the work for him? That question changes everything. Because when you stop forcing connection, you give someone the opportunity to reveal their own desire for it. You don't punish them. You don't play games. You don't disappear to manipulate them. You simply stop overfunctioning. You let the relationship breathe, and then you observe. Does he reach out? Does he notice the space? Does he create a new opportunity to connect? Does he ask questions? Does he continue building the bridge? Because when a man is genuinely interested, you shouldn't have to manufacture every opportunity for closeness. He may not always be perfectly consistent. He's human. He may have work, family, stress, responsibilities. Life doesn't stop because someone develops a crush. but over time, you should be able to feel a pattern of movement toward you. And that movement is important because relationships are ultimately built through repeated choices. Not one perfect conversation, not one intoxicating night, not one beautiful compliment, repeated choices. I'll call her, I'll remember that, I'll make time, I'll ask, I'll show up, I'll tell her, I'll follow through. These choices may seem small, but they accumulate. And eventually, the accumulation becomes intimacy. That's how closeness is built, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, experience by experience. And that's why the smallest gestures can sometimes tell you more than the loudest declarations. A man who is falling for you may not always say, "I want you in my life," but he may start behaving as though your presence belongs there. He starts including you in his thoughts, then his conversations, then his plans, then his emotional world. And gradually, without either of you making a formal announcement, you become part of the architecture of his everyday life. But there's one more distinction I want you to remember. You should never confuse being someone's emotional convenience with being someone's genuine priority. A man may reach out because he's lonely. He may want attention because he's bored. He may enjoy flirting because it boosts his ego. He may like having access to you without actually wanting responsibility for your heart. That's why effort alone isn't enough. Look at the quality of the effort. Is he curious about you? Does he respect your boundaries? Does he remember what you tell him? Does he care about your experience? Does he make space for you beyond moments that benefit him? Does his behavior become more intentional as time goes on? Because genuine connection has a direction, it moves somewhere. And when someone is truly falling for you, you often feel that movement not because they overwhelm you with attention, but because little by little, they make it easier to believe that you're not. Imagining the connection, that's the beautiful thing about healthy attraction. You don't have to force it into existence. You don't have to convince someone to care. You don't have to perform endlessly to remain interesting. You simply give the connection enough space to reveal what is already there. And if he keeps finding small reasons to come closer, keep talking, keep remembering, keep showing up, then don't dismiss those moments simply because they aren't dramatic. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as a message that says, "This reminded me of you." Sometimes it's the question he remembers to ask. Sometimes it's the conversation he doesn't want to end. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to make room for you again tomorrow. And when those small choices keep happening, they begin telling one much bigger story. And this is where the story becomes more interesting, because once a man starts paying closer attention to you and creating little opportunities to connect, there is often a deeper shift that begins to happen. He starts letting you see more of him, not just the polished version, not just the confident version, not just the version that knows exactly what to say. You start seeing the human being underneath the performance. And one of the clearest signs that attraction is becoming emotional is when a man begins allowing himself to become vulnerable around you, and, perhaps even more importantly, when your opinions start to matter to him, because there is a profound difference between wanting someone's attention and wanting someone's understanding. Anyone can enjoy being admired, but when someone starts caring deeply about how you perceive them, something much more personal is happening. Think about it. There are people whose opinions you simply don't care about. They can misunderstand you, criticize you, or disagree with you, and you move on. Then there are people whose opinions have weight. When they respect you, it means something. When they're disappointed in you, you feel it. When they admire something you've done, you remember it. Why? Because emotional significance changes the value of someone's opinion. And when a man is developing serious feelings for a woman, her perception can gradually become one of those emotionally significant mirrors. He begins wondering how she sees him. Does she think I'm trustworthy? Does she respect me? Does she understand me? Does she think I'm capable? Does she see the good in me? And sometimes, without realizing it, he starts revealing pieces of himself that answer those questions. This might begin very casually. He tells you about something that went wrong at work. He talks about a decision he's struggling with. He shares a story about his childhood. He admits something he's insecure about. He tells you about an ambition that he hasn't shared with many people. Or perhaps he lets you see him on a day when he isn't particularly impressive. That's important, because vulnerability is not simply telling someone a secret. Vulnerability is allowing someone access to a part of you that could be judged. That's what makes it emotionally risky. When you reveal something personal, you are essentially saying, "Here is a part of me that matters. What will you do with it?" And when a man begins taking that risk with you, it can be a sign that he no longer sees you as merely someone he finds attractive. He may be beginning to see you as someone he trusts, and trust is where attraction can become attachment. But let's make something very clear. Vulnerability does not automatically mean commitment. A man can open up to you and still be confused. He can tell you intimate things and still not know what he wants. He can feel deeply connected to you and still lack the emotional maturity to build a healthy relationship. So the point isn't to romanticize vulnerability. The point is to understand what it reveals. It tells you that you have entered a part of his psychological world. And that matters, because when people become emotionally important to us, we don't only want to impress them. We want them to know us. That's a different desire. When attraction is purely superficial, we often want to present the best version of ourselves. But when emotional attachment develops, something strange happens. We start wanting to be understood even when we aren't at our best. We want someone to know why we react the way we do. We want them to understand our fears. We want them to understand our ambitions. We want them to know the experiences that shaped us. In other words, we stop asking only, "Do you like me?" and we start asking, "Can you see me?" That question is profoundly human. Because one of the deepest desires people carry isn't simply to be loved, it's to be *** known and still loved ***. That's why emotional intimacy can feel so powerful. You're not merely saying, "Look at my strengths." You're saying, "Here are my complexities, here are my contradictions, here are the parts of me I'm still figuring out." And if he begins allowing you into that territory, pay attention. Not because it guarantees a future, but because it tells you something about the level of trust developing between you. You may also notice something else. He starts asking what you think, not just "What do you want to eat?" and not just "Which movie should we watch?" but questions that reveal that your perspective genuinely matters. What would you do? Do you think I handled that right? Would you take this opportunity? What do you think about this? Now again, don't turn every question into a romantic prophecy. Sometimes people simply value good advice. But if you notice a growing pattern in which he seeks your perspective, remembers what you said, and allows your viewpoint to influence his decisions, you're seeing something important. He values your mind, and intellectual respect is one of the most underrated forms of attraction. Physical attraction says, I desire you. Emotional attraction says, I feel safe with you. Intellectual attraction says, I value the way you see the world. When all three begin interacting, a much deeper bond can emerge. And this is also where a man may start becoming more careful about how he behaves around you. Not necessarily because he's afraid of you, because he doesn't want to disappoint you. That's a very different psychological experience. If your opinion doesn't matter, he can behave however he wants. But if he respects you, your perception becomes part of his internal decision making. He may think twice before saying something disrespectful. He may apologize when he realizes he's hurt you. He may care whether you misunderstood his intentions. He may want to explain himself when he normally wouldn't bother. And this is where we discover something important about relationships. Someone's feelings are not measured only by how intensely they want you. They're also measured by how seriously they take your experience. That's a distinction worth remembering, because some people want access to you without caring about your emotional reality. They want your attention, they want your affection, they want your admiration, but they don't want the responsibility of considering how their actions affect you. That's not emotional maturity. So when you look for signs that a man is falling for you, don't simply ask whether he becomes more vulnerable. Ask what he does with the vulnerability. Does he become more considerate, more honest, more consistent? More respectful? Does knowing you better make him treat you better? Because that's where feelings become meaningful. And there's another fascinating psychological shift that can happen. He may start revealing things not because he wants sympathy, but because he wants connection. There's a difference. He doesn't just tell you what happened. He tells you how it made him feel. He doesn't just tell you about the problem. He tells you why it mattered. He lets you see the emotional meaning behind the event. That's intimacy. Facts tell you what happened. Vulnerability tells you what it meant. And when someone begins sharing meaning with you, they're inviting you into their internal world. That is a much deeper form of closeness. But perhaps the most important lesson here is this: don't make it your job to rescue him. If a man opens up to you, you don't automatically become his therapist, emotional caretaker, or savior. You can listen, you can understand, you can empathize, but you don't have to carry his emotional life for him. Healthy intimacy is mutual. He gets to be vulnerable with you, and you get to be vulnerable with him. He gets to have needs, and you get to have needs. He gets to be imperfect, and you get to be imperfect. That's what makes a relationship human rather than performative. And eventually, if feelings are genuinely developing, you may notice that he doesn't just want to impress you. He wants to be accepted by you without having to pretend . That's one of the most beautiful transitions in attraction. At the beginning, we often present ourselves. Later, if trust develops, we reveal ourselves. And eventually, in a healthy relationship, we can simply be ourselves. That's the movement from performance to intimacy. And it is one of the clearest signs that attraction is becoming something deeper. But remember the larger lesson from everything we've discussed. Don't become obsessed with collecting signs. Don't turn dating into an investigation. Don't spend every night analyzing his words, his texts, his body language, or the timing of his replies. Observe the pattern. Look at how he treats you over time. Does he pay attention? Does he create connection? Does he become more open? Does he value your perspective? Does he make you feel respected? does his behavior become increasingly intentional. Because when genuine feelings grow, they usually create movement, not perfection, not certainty overnight. Movement, he moves closer emotionally, he moves closer practically, he moves closer psychologically. And eventually, if he is emotionally mature and genuinely interested, that movement becomes visible in his actions. That's what you should wait for, not a perfect confession, not a cinematic moment, not some magical sentence that finally gives you permission to believe what you've been hoping. Look for the gradual alignment between what he feels, what he says, and what he does. Because when those three things begin pointing in the same direction, you no longer have to spend your life decoding him. You can simply observe reality, and reality is far more powerful than speculation. So if he begins letting you see behind the mask, if he trusts you with the parts of himself that aren't polished, if your opinion starts carrying genuine weight, don't rush to label it love. Just recognize what it may be, a door opening, a deeper form of connection becoming possible. And then ask yourself the question that matters even more than, is he falling for me? Ask, is the way he loves becoming something I can actually trust? Because being desired can feel intoxicating. Being understood can feel profound, but being consistently respected, valued, and chosen, that is what turns attraction into something worth building. And remember this.